Okay, so today I'm back to report on even more Bristol City Council bullshit and the continuing story of the difficulties of basically homeless people. Now this guy here is, his name is John Hurst, and for the purposes of comedy I'm going to call him Mein Führer, because he thinks he himself is a bit of a little Hitler. And he runs this organisation, it's to do with tourism really, but it's called Destination Bristol, of which he is chief executive. And there's a cartel of business owners around the city centre who are part of this thing called Broadmead bid, where they're putting in for a lot of money to redevelop Broadmead and, you know, to a certain extent bring it more up to date. And these people have a lot of clout. You know, they are some of the top traders in the town, some of the biggest sort of chain retail stores, and they're all after more money to, as I say, to help to redevelop Broadmead and do a lot with it, which is absolutely fine. But they are very much against homeless people. They are the driving force behind the police chasing the homeless out of the city centre. And it's fine, you know, if people want to sit in shop doorways all day long or busk or whatever, that's fine. You know, as long as they're not hassling people, as long as they're not sitting outside ATM machines and aggressively begging, or just walking down the streets aggressively begging, then they should be left alone. But this Bristol Broadmead bid team just wants to get rid of all the homeless, because it's, you know, it's unsightly, isn't it, when you're leaving, you know, your nice 3-4 bed semi in the morning and driving in to run one of the big stores in town. You know, you really don't want to be seeing, you know, nasty homeless people sitting in doorways, do you? You know, just it's not the done thing, is it? It's quite, you know, it's offensive, and so they're driving them out. And I'm not aware of any royal wedding coming up. Let me just check my schedule here. Right, events. Right, who have we got invitations from? Right, there's one from Nicole Slurzinger. Simon Cowell's having a summer barbecue again. What else have we got down here? Oh, there's one from the Sultan of Oman. You know, he's doing something on a yacht in the Med. I don't think I could be bothered with the jet lag, really. There's one from Stephen. Oh, damn. I must make a note myself, actually, to reply to Stephen Fry, which is activated. But there's nothing on my schedule in terms of invitations to a royal wedding. So I just suppose it's just plain bullying, isn't it, really? To get people off the streets if there's no royal wedding. If it was you or I sitting on the streets in a doorway, we wouldn't be hassled at all. But because you kind of look homeless and you might look a little bit rough, then it's fine to bully people. And this is what this is all about. It's just bullying people to get them out of the city centre. It's driving people out of town so they become the problem of another town or another city or something else. Just not Bristol's problem. And when these, you know, the homeless are kind of outside of the city centre, there's no telling who's where or what's happening to them. And this really is part of the problem, because then there's no kind of record. And yes, you've got these organisations which rinse the council of money. We're talking sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, and all they do is kind of tick a box just to say that they've done something so they can get the next tranche of funding. And that's the way it works. Okay, so here he is again, the man who's little Hitler to Broadmead in Bristol, and thinks Broadmead is his own personal fiefdom, who has the power to just phone up the police, and anything will happen, you know, if John Hurst phones the police, because he has an amazing amount of clout. And I call him Little Hitler, and we sort of dressed him up here for the purposes of comedy, for no other reason. And I have to say that There is a disclaimer here which says that although he's in a Nazi uniform, there's no suggestion that he's involved with the Nazis or has any belief in the Nazis. It is purely just for comedy purposes, and the fact that he is something of Little Hitler and the kind of chief bully of the cartel. So I have to put that disclaimer up for legal purposes because I don't really want to be sued, and it makes it very clear that he is not really a Nazi. Okay, so what is it actually like to be one of the volunteers on the street who's out there every day trying to help people? And I have to say far more than the organisations who actually pay to do it. So this is a typical day in the life of a voluntary outreach worker, and this just happens to be Hayley from Help the Homeless. Today I feel if I'm honest, drained, fed up, frustrated and disappointed. I spent 5 hours trying to help someone, having someone plead that they need help. I fully understand people do make bad choices. I fully get the issues surrounding homelessness are very complex. But this system really isn't helping. The day started with us HHB being able to purchase 3 hot drinks for 3 individuals who have no fixed abode, sleeping rough on the streets of Bristol. They were all very grateful. I then attempted to ring the council, no response. I then tried to make contact with the outreach team, busy in meetings. I then called the crisis team who advised me to contact the police. I contacted the police to then be told to ring back the crisis team, who then told me they couldn't do anything. The person had to present at A and E. I explained this to the person I was trying to help. I've been to the hospital 3 times, Hayley. They don't help me. We then rang their GP, who was fully booked. I went to the walk-in centre again. They couldn't help. We bumped into some of the outreach team who didn't have any answers or suggestions. The person I was trying to help by this point was getting agitated. I can't blame them. We went and had a coffee, tried the council for the 8th time. Finally someone answered for us to be told the person isn't in priority need. So now they have to go onto the waiting list along with how many other people? I'm not sure, but I can imagine the wait is long. No wonder people give up hope and sit smoking spice all day. What a situation to be in. No help from council, no accommodation available, no identification to check yourself into a hostel, no phone, no bank account, no benefits in place, no space at the crash pad, no medication in place. People having to rely on the goodwill of people for food and drink, relying on outreach groups to bring a sleeping bag and offer some clean clothes. Basically, if you're on the street, your life is just one big revolving door and you are pushed from one pillar to one post all of the time, getting absolutely nowhere, just going around and around in circles, because the system in this city is not joined up, is not connected. No one has a handle on it. No one has a clue what anyone else is doing. And this is the problem when councils subcontract their services instead of taking charge and being able to provide a wraparound service, which is what they should be doing. Instead of which they're paying hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of £1,000s to organisations, charities, and all they do is tick boxes so that when the next tranche of funding comes along, they can say, yes, we've done our job, now can we have some more money please? So on the one hand, you have this broad meat bid team doing everything possible to get the homeless out of the city centre, because it looks bad, it looks nasty, it looks offensive. We can't have these people on our streets. It looks really bad for the city centre. On the other side, you have a very useless council which sends people around in circles. Doesn't really help at all, because I said it hasn't got a grip on it. It's not running it. It's farming it out and subcontracting it. So it doesn't really know what's going on out there at all. It might have an idea, but it doesn't really know what's going on. It just sends people around in circles. And the man who's responsible for it is this chap here. He's the Labour portfolio holder for housing, and his name is Paul Smith. Now, Paul Smith's answer, quite rightly, is to get people into accommodation. But not everybody wants to go into the accommodation that's provided, because ironically they don't feel safe. Again, because it's outsourced to another organisation which the council isn't running. The council has no grip on it. And here's another report from Help the Homeless on their Facebook page, talking to people who actually live on the streets. And again, I'm going to read it to you because I appreciate the fact that it's quite small. So, update on this evening's outreach. Tonight we were told how a few people had been attacked in the local hostels, so they no longer wish to stay in them. It's safe on the streets, they said. We've seen another guy who was shivering. We were able to give him a few essentials along with a sleeping bag. A couple of guys had just been released from prison back onto the streets. We want to go back inside, they told me. Another gentleman told me how he was woken up this morning with someone chucking freezing water on him. He told me he wants to go to jail. I've had enough, he said. We've seen someone we hadn't seen for a while. It was nice to see he is okay, well surviving. He has been in hospital for the last 4 weeks and is now back on the streets. So whether you're released from prison or whether you're released from hospital, you're just put back out on the streets again to survive. No aftercare, nothing. And if you're put into a hostel, you stand every chance of being attacked, or if you're trying to give up alcohol, or you have a problem with alcohol or drugs, you're with people who will encourage you to take more alcohol and drugs. So no wonder people feel safer on the streets, even if they get attacked. Ironically, it's better than being in a hostel. And the council are doing absolutely nothing whatsoever about it. Oh, it isn't our problem. We'll farm it out to an organisation, a charity, and give them loads of money to do nothing at all. And I had a run-in with Councillor Paul Smith on BBC Radio Bristol, because I thought it would be a brilliant idea to introduce a rough sleepers charter which laid out the respect on dignity, and dignity should I say, that should be given and offered on both sides. And here's just one part of that. One part. I'll read you that now as well. It says, you have the right to reside the way you choose, and for this to be supported in whichever ways you feel are best for you as a rough sleeper. It doesn't matter if it's in a doorway, in a tent, wherever it happens to be. If that's the place where someone feels safe and comfortable, fine. Providing they're not doing any harm, providing they're not breaking the law, let them get on with it and respect that is their choice. But the council doesn't want to do that. The council says it's our way or the highway. It's about control. It's not about respecting the individual and the way that that individual chooses to live, which suits them at that moment in their life, at that point in their life. This is about control. Excuse me. There is something really nasty about that. that doesn't give people a choice. It says, you have to be in this accommodation or we're not going to help you. You can starve, you can die. We don't care. If you don't do it our way, you're not going to get any help at all. Doesn't matter whether you're mentally ill or what's wrong with you. You could have a leg hanging off. We don't care. You have to do it our way. And there is just something that I find really nasty and controlling and actually disrespectful about that. But it's all about the council and what the council wants, because it tidies up the streets. It doesn't look so bad to visitors. It's not such an embarrassment. That's what it's really about. As for the charities, they get paid so much per person they help. And when they've helped them, they just move on to the next person. They've done their bit. There's no real aftercare, there's no real follow through. Why should there be? That charity's got its money. It can tick a box. It can move on. And the council are paying for it. So the issue of homelessness in Bristol, like other cities, is absolutely appalling. It dehumanises people. It doesn't respect the fact that somebody chooses to live wherever they choose to live. It is their home. It might not be much, but it's their home. Whether it be a tent, a cardboard box, or sleeping under the stars. It's their choice. Respect that choice. Support them in that choice for as long as they need that support. And they are ready to move on at their own time. There are some people, yes, who would love to get into housing. Fine. But you cannot treat everybody the same way. We are all different. We all have different needs at different points in our lives. But to be controlled and to be told how to live because it suits someone else who happens to live in a nice comfortable house with central heating and a car in the driveway and a very comfortable living is an appalling state of affairs. I know, I've lived on the streets and I know what it's like. It's tough. Just leave people alone. Help them and support them where they are at that time. Don't bully them. Don't hassle them. Don't drive them out of town. Do something. Do something positive to enable, empower and help people to live the way they choose to live. And stop trying to control people. Stop trying to tell them how to live their lives because it suits you to do so. It enables you, in whatever function you're in housing in this city centre, it enables you just to tick a box so that you can clock off at 4 o'clock, go home and come back the following day to start again, while there are people living out there on the streets. It's awful. And while the City Council are not in control, it is never going to change. What will change it, and what is changing it, are people like Hayley Jennings, her group, and others around the city centre who are out there day and night, not being paid a penny for what they're doing. Not a penny. And doing a far better job than the organisations which are just rinsing the council for money and doing absolutely beggar all. End of.